Morning. The other day I was out doing some leaf removals and I ran into an issue with the Cyclone Rake engine that I have on the trailer. I use it as a loader. I was sucking everything up with the extension tubes, and there was a chunk of wood laying on the ground, and I went over top of it before I noticed, and I saw it at the last second as it got sucked up into the tube, and at that point I went, ah crap, and it slammed into the machine and it shattered my impeller. Luckily, through Cyclone Rake, you can order spare parts. And it's not just that you have to order the entire machine or the entire engine assembly all at once. I just needed a new impeller. So here's the damage I ran into. Now, just a disclaimer for everybody watching this video. This is going to be a longer style video. I'm going to go step by step through the instructions that come with everything and show you the process of how to do it. It's going to be a longer video, but if at any point you don't want to listen to my yammering, or you just want to skip past something to get the gist of it, go on ahead. It's not going to offend me at all. So I went out and got it off of the trailer, which is a pretty simple process. But you can see that that wood slammed into it and snapped off that fin, snapped off half of that fin. I think those were the only ones that were really damaged. But yeah, they snapped them right off, which knocked the thing out of balance, and then the whole machine was just going because that was vibrating all over the place because the impeller's out of balance. So I ordered a new Cyclone Rake impeller, and here's what you get when you get the impeller. This is for the Z-10 model, and they don't send the entire housing and everything, I guess, for it. So you get the brand new impeller in the box, and then they have this kit with everything that you're going to need. There's instructions in there, all of the hardware. I'm not sure if I'll end up using all of the hardware, because I'm not sure where these T-nuts would go. But there's even the Allen socket that you need. This bolt is used for pulling the old impeller off. You've got another Allen wrench in there, and it even comes with a little thing of anti-seize in there. But all the washers and everything that you need, and the instructions to go with it to step by step pull the old impeller off and put the new one on. So that's today's project. That way I can get back to doing leaf removals. So these are the tools that it says in the instructions that you're going to need. 3/8 drive, ratchet. I've got the longer handle one and my little stubby one, because a lot of times these little stubby ratchets, oh my goodness, they are so handy. I don't know how I fixed anything before I had this little 3/8 inch drive stubby wrench. I use this thing constantly. So I grabbed that one just in case. It says a 6-inch or longer extension, 2 1/2-inch wrenches, a 7/16 wrench, but I don't have one of those, so an 11 millimeter is the equivalent to a 7/16, a Phillips head screwdriver, and a flathead screwdriver, and then they supply a 3/16 ball end Allen wrench and a 3/8 Allen socket. So those are the tools that the instructions are saying you're going to need. These two come in the hardware kit. It also says you're going to need a 2x4 around 2 feet long. That's just to shove down into the impeller housing to lock the impeller in place. That way you can get it off. Now, step 1. Take your 2x4 and shove it in the top of the impeller housing to get that sucker stuck in place. Then you use your extension with the 3/8 Allen socket on it. Maybe use the longer handled one to get some leverage. Clean out the bolt, so that way the socket can fit fully in there, and get to cranking. It's in there tight. Nice steady pressure. Oh, goodness. All right, well, let me hit this with some penetrating oil, see if that'll help at all. Now this machine had a long life outside before I bought it. Because the guy that I bought it from, I think he used it for one season and just parked it in his backyard, and that's where it sat until I bought it. So it's probably rust welded in there pretty good. Get in there. Okay. I don't know if that's long enough for that to sit, but we'll give it another try. I just don't want it to break. There we go. Hey, that helps. Spinning out that center bolt. The nice thing about these flex heads is you can just fold the handle right out of the way. Spin it out a little quicker. Okay. Then what we have coming out, we've got a real thick washer, and there's another washer underneath there, underneath all that dirt and leaves and grass and gunk. But yeah, real big washer, small washer above that, then your bolt. We'll take that, set that off to the side. Invest in a magnetic tray. These are very, very handy. They're like $4 at Harbor Freight. They keep all of your stuff in place when you're using it. Go grab you one. Stick it right to your toolbox. You'll use it all the time. Alright. It says there's a tip on the instructions to never use an L-shaped hex wrench to remove the impeller bolt. You will not be able to get enough torque and risk stripping the bolt head. So, yeah, don't use an Allen bolt. Just use the socket that they give you. Because those Allen head bolts, or those Allen wrenches, they're pretty short. So you'd be in there, you wouldn't be able to get much leverage on it. Helpful tip. Step 2 is remove the blower housing nut which connects to the engine, or the engine to the blower unit. That would be that sucker right there. Because the engine has the bracket down here, and then it comes up and bolts it to the housing. So if we take that off, that will separate it, the housing, from the engine. So let's get that one. See if I can figure out how to... There we go. And which one is that? That would be your 1/2-inch wrench. You don't have to use a ratcheting wrench, but if you have them, they make life a lot easier. Then it does say to save the hardware as you go. So we've got that off. It's got your nylon nut and a washer. Toss that in your magnetic tray. Step 3, remove the connecting screws and the support bracket. So you've got these nuts right here, if you can see it. These nuts right here. There's another set on the other side of this bracket, and then this bracket, or this nut and bolt, this nut and bolt. That will remove the housing from the engine frame. So 1, 2, 3, 4, using your 1/2-inch wrench. I'm not exactly sure how to get in there because it's kind of tight. There are 2 nuts on this part down here. There's one that tightens everything in, and then there is a nylon, kind of like a lock nut style. I can't get my ratcheting wrench on there. So this will be a little bit of a longer process that will take some more patience. Get on there. My goodness, these little tight spaces. I don't like them. Alright, let me get those off and I'll get back with you. Alright, I got them off. So you've got two nuts down there. But you've got the bolt that comes through and it has a regular nut on it, tightens onto there, and then it has your nylon nut that goes on and kind of locks everything in place. That way it doesn't back off through the vibration. So there's one there. There's another one on the other side of the engine that we need to get off. Right there. Just those two on the bottom, holding that bracket on. And then we will move on to these two bolts. This side is a lot more open and easier to get to if you don't have to compete with the engine being in your way. Should be able to loosen them up and then take them off by hand once they get the tension off of them. Just remember, regular nut first, nylon nut on the outside. Take those, throw them in your magnetic tray. That way you don't lose them. And we'll spin this sucker back around. And, oh, yep. Those ones on the bottom there. Not a lot of room. Maybe that's why they want you to have two 1/2-inch wrenches. Look at that. These ones just have a bolt and a nylon nut. Throw that in there. And see if you can get it onto the other side. Looks like we might be able to. That one was tight. Spin that one off. Alright. 1/2-inch bolt, 1/2-inch nylon nut. I always put them back together like that so that I don't lose them. That way I don't have just random nuts and bolts floating around my magnetic tray. I know this nut goes with this bolt. Throw that in your magnetic tray. Okay, we got those nuts and bolts out of there. Time to move on to step 4. Removing the blower housing. This step can be done with one person, but it is a lot easier if you have a helper. Pull the blower housing away from the engine. The engine shaft should pull right out of the impeller. Yeah, right. If necessary, reach inside the front of the blower and support the impeller while you pull out the engine. If the impeller does not pull out by hand, with the 8, 9, and 10 horse engines, insert the 3/8-inch steel pin into the hole of the impeller hub. Where is that? 3/8 pin. There it is, right in our hardware bag. This is the pin that they're talking about. Insert that into, where was I? Right into the impeller. If necessary, reach around the impeller. The hole in the impeller hub. Insert the 1/2-inch. Then screw in the 1/2, 13. All others use the bolt. Use the 3/4-inch socket to tighten the bolt. So, if you need this step, then you're going to also need a 3-inch socket. Now, in theory, they're saying they expect me to believe that this impeller is just going to pop right off of the engine shaft. I don't believe them, because that never works out that easy. So, Yeah. The impeller is not pulling off of there. Judging by how tight that stinking bolt was, that's not going to come out. Then we go to plan B. Alright. Whoa. Easy now. Okay. So we're going to go that route where we're going to put the pin into the hole. Then, which bolt was that? Was that this one? Oh, those are not the same size there. Is it the same Allen bolt? Alright, what I've figured out is what it looks like inside of that impeller shaft. Engine, the engine shaft. Right here. Looks like there are two sets of threads in there. One set is smaller for your Allen head bolt, and then there's another bigger set that will fit this longer threaded bolt. So, stick your pin in the hole, and then use your longer threaded bolt on the bigger set of threads. And what that's going to do is that's going to act as a puller, because it's pulling on the threads on the impeller and pushing the engine shaft out of it. So, you know, before I do that, I'm going to spray that down with some more penetrating oil just to kind of clean up those threads and lube those threads a little bit. Clean up any rust or gunk that might be in the way. We're going to give this a shot, and we're really going to hope that it works. Alright, that's bottomed out. Let me go grab the right socket. It says a 3/4 socket if you need to do this. Got my 3/4 socket. That on there. We're going to need our piece of wood again that I took out. I'm going to hold on to it because we're spinning the other direction. So far it's spinning pretty easy. Come on now. Anytime you want to come off of there. Look at that. It's coming right off. I can see on the PTO shaft back behind it, the key and everything are sliding right off. Are we clear yet? Nope, of course not. See now, since it's going nice and smooth, we're switching over to the stubby. Just keep spinning it in. Alright, now we are clear. So what that did is it pushed the shaft right out of the back of the impeller. So you see the key and everything came right out. The key I'm talking about is there's a little piece of metal that fits into this groove that's on the PTO, and it keeps everything moving. That way the impeller doesn't just slide around the slick shaft. It's got that key that goes into the impeller and into the PTO, and it keeps it locked together. Okay, now this whole piece should come off with the impeller inside of it. Look at that. So now we've got everything separated off of there, and we'll continue to move through the steps. Now after you get this housing separated from the engine, don't forget to go back and pull the pin out of your PTO. I just have a little magnet. Pop it right out of there. That way you don't run into issues putting everything back on, forgetting that this little pin is in the shaft. For this next section, we're going to move up to the workbench because I don't like being on the floor while I'm working on stuff if I can do it. Plus, this is a lot smaller and lighter than having the entire engine assembly up here. That sucker is heavy, and I didn't have room for it up here. So we're going to switch over to the workbench. Okay, so step 5, removing the rear cover and heat shield. Use your 1/2 inch and 7/16 inch, in my case an 11mm, hopefully it works, to remove the 4 nylon bolts that are on the heat shield. 1, 2, 3, 4. What we're going to do is remove this whole back cover so that we can get the impeller out of the housing. So let's see here. Oh, there we go. Now keep in mind, you may have some of these bolts fall out on the inside because they're not permanently affixed to these, I don't think. Yeah, that one's got a little bit of a bracket, like this one's loose, so they may pop through and fall out on you. One. I may have to. Dang it. This top one has a washer and then the nut on it. Throw those in there. Dang, that hurt. Then my 11mm, look at that. It did work. I guess you could do this part with a socket, but I've already got the wrenches out, so we'll just go ahead and use those to loosen these up. Well, this thing has seen some use. Alright, heat shield removed. It must be nap time. My baby's throwing a fit. Okay, next step. Remove the heat shield. Next, remove the 7 special screws holding the rear cover of the housing with a Phillips head screwdriver. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So take your Phillips head and get those off of there. Oh boy, they're in there tight. Put a lot of pressure on them. Don't strip them out. It's turning, but it's not backing out. What's going on here? Oh, it's got like a bracket or something holding them on the inside. Ooh. Don't strip them. Don't you strip. They're not backing out. Yep, they're held in place by some inserts. Let me grab a pair of pliers. What I'm going to attempt to do is hold them with a pair of, I think they're referred to as slip joint pliers. So what I'm running into, let me get you right up in there, is those little inserts. As I'm spinning the Phillips head screws, those inserts are turning as well. So I'm going to attempt to grab a hold of those just enough with a pair of pliers to where they will stay still and the screw will come out. Will it work? I don't know. If it doesn't, we'll figure something else out. hopefully that will do it without causing me any real big headache. Let's try that one right there. You got to put some pressure on these things. That way you don't strip them. Well, that's working. Good deal. Ooh, a little rusty. Alright, so we'll get all 7 of those out. And then this whole back plate should come off so we can get to the impeller inside. So I got all 7 of those bolts taken out. I kind of cheated. Using the pliers to hold the inside it did the trick. And to make it a little quicker and easier, I cheated and I used an impact. So that makes it a little quicker. So now this, oh well, I guess we still got to get that bolt off, huh? So now we've still got 1 nut there and 1 nut there to remove. Those look like the 1/2 inch. Yep. That's a nylon bolt, or a nylon nut. And so is that one. And 2 nylon nut. So then this whole thing should pop off. This whole shield on the back. I'm going to remember this sticker was on the outside. That way I don't put that on backwards, which I don't know if you can, but my luck never fails. Now, we can get this impeller out. Here's the old impeller versus the new impeller. Match them up, make sure they line up. Yeah, that one. The new one looks to be a little smaller than the old one. Maybe that'll make a difference. I don't know. But it's not broken, so we're going to use it. So then we're going to take the new impeller, make sure it's facing the right direction, put it in the housing. Then we just reverse all of the steps. Alright. Now it does say that if these bolts fall through the housing, just push them back in. It looks like there's a bracket that holds these 2 on. There's a bracket that holds these 2. And then this one is just has that little square on the bottom side of the head. And it holds it in place right there. Now some of these little inserts for the heat shield and whatnot did come out, but you can just stick those back in the holes wherever they fell out of and zip those back on. So now we're going to get the heat shield back on. Sticker facing the outside. Come on. There we go. That keeps all those lined up. Okay. Now we can get our 7 special screws, as it describes them, back into their holes. Always start your threads by hand. You don't want to just put an impact on them and start zipping these in and cross thread them, because then you'll jack it all up. That will just create more headache for you and a trip to the hardware store or paying more for new screws and whatnot. So always start them by hand or with just a nice easy pressure. Let's see, that one is still in there. They're all the same length, so you don't have to worry about putting them back in specific holes. I'm going to get all these put back in. I'll pick y'all back up once I get that done. Well, one thing I forgot, it says on the instructions to at this point install new screws, the 7 new screws that come in the kit with the new T-nut inserts that go on the inside with the thread locker that is provided. So this comes in your hardware kit along with everything else that you're going to need. So put some thread locker on there. These machines vibrate like crazy. So it would not be, unimaginable for these to back themselves out through the vibration, because this machine vibrates a lot when it's in use. So stick some thread locker on them and then put them all in using the new screws and T-nuts. I think I'm just going to reuse the old screws because this is not my main machine, so I would like to have some spare hardware for my main machine that's behind the camera. So I'm going to get these thread lockered up and put back in. Just get some of that. Squeeze a little bit on. I'm just holding the insert on the inside just to make sure it doesn't fall out. Then as you screw this in there, it will distribute it through the threads. I don't know if it is going to make a difference or not, because all of my inserts on the inside, I sprayed them down with penetrating oil. I don't know if that's going to make a difference and keep the thread locker from setting up or not. But I'm putting it on there like the instructions say. All of these bolts, that's the nice thing about them having those the nylon nuts, is those nylon nuts I think will actually hold tighter and stay in place longer than thread locker. I found a video on YouTube where a guy was testing that out, having, actually that might have been just regular like jam nuts versus a nylon nut. But the nylon nut, it held all the way through the test. So it's kind of nice having a lot of this stuff, having those nylon nuts on them to where they don't back out from the vibration. See, that one's a little tight. Back it back out, line it back up. And just with light pressure. Don't want to cross thread anything. I'm just kind of getting these in there. I'll go back when I get them all in and tighten them all up. Feel free to skip past this section of the video if you're getting bored, because I understand it could be a bit boring watching a guy just tighten up certain screws and doing the repetitive process of putting thread locker on them. I know I said I would skip it and get this part done, then pick the camera back up. Then I remembered, oh yeah, you're going to put thread locker on there, and by the instructions they want you to put the new screws and new stuff on the back. I think this is the last one. It's nice that they provide the thread locker instead of just telling you about it. Cyclone Rake, they're Woodland Power products. They've been a pretty good company to me over the years. They're always having specials throughout the year for getting discounts on the price of the equipment or having free shipping on the equipment. If you just check back with them on their website from time to time, you'll see them around Christmas or around fall time. And then they've got more than just the Cyclone Rake on there. They've got like a push lawn vacuum. They've got the nut picker uppers for if you've got a bunch of acorns or walnuts or whatever kind of nut trees you have. They've got a bunch of those products. So they got a bunch of different things, and there's a bunch of different models of Cyclone Rakes that they have. So they're a pretty good company. And you call in and you say you have a problem, they can get you the replacement parts. They can send you the different kits that you need. So they're pretty good. All right, on to the next step. Replace the rear cover, blah, blah, blah. Replace the two 5/16, 18 nylon lock nuts, which I believe were these. Put that sucker back on. That one back on. Now we're pretty much just reversing the whole process of what we did earlier. At this point, you should be able to remember what went where. So add those two bolts back on there. We got all those back in. Okay. So we're going to reattach the heat shield and then get this thing back down onto the floor and hook it back up to the engine. Now remember, with this heat shield, this up here had your washer on it. Snug that up nice and neat. Nice and tight. Okay. That's good. Now, if you crank down on these nylon nuts, you can strip out the nylon from inside of them, which would not be very helpful. Alright, so got that put back together. Let's get it back down to the engine. Okay, so we are to step one of reassembly on this. Orient the engine shaft so that the keyway is on the top. There's your keyway, that little notch that's cut into the shaft. Rotate the cord, or pull the cord to rotate it to where it's on the top, if it's not there already. Next, clean it with an old toothbrush or a clean rag to remove grit and dust. I'm just going to use a little wire brush. These are like $1 or less at Harbor Freight. Just to clean it up, get any of the gunk off. Kind of rub it around on there, try to get some of that rust off and remove any dirt, gunk, and corrosion that may get in the way. It says an old toothbrush or a rag. Just gonna go with the old trusty wire brush. These mating surfaces, when you're putting stuff on like this, you always want them to be clean as you can, just so you don't have bits of rust and stuff on there that's going to prevent you from getting the new piece on there. Want them nice and clean. Okay, then we're just going to take shirt sleeve and wipe everything off. Gonna get down into that groove and make sure there's no dust or rust in there. Then it says to press the new key, which is in your hardware bag. This piece here is your key. It's just a square piece of metal. And that's what's going to go in this slot, just like that. And there's another notch in the impeller that's going to slide over that as well. That way, when the engine is turning, the impeller is also turning and won't slip on this shaft. Now, it says to put this in there and do not, it's bold and italicized, and it says do not tap it with a hammer. If you nick the key, it will not fit into the impeller hub. So, make sure you don't tap it in there. If it doesn't fit, go ahead and clean everything out real good again. That way, it will fit right into there. Then, it says open the package of anti-seize, which comes in your hardware kit, and smear it, coat the shaft and the key with the grease. Now there's also a tiny brush that comes in your hardware kit. Just a little tiny brush. So open the package of anti-seize, squirt it on the shaft and the key, brush it all around. What this stuff is going to do is it's going to keep the impeller from rust welding itself to the shaft. Hence the term anti-seize. It keeps it or prevents it from seizing altogether, getting all rust welded and corroded onto there. Put it on the key, brush it all around the shaft. Now, if for some reason your kit does not include the anti-seize, you can go to any hardware, I think hardware stores should probably have it. Auto parts stores will definitely have it. It comes in a bottle, or you can get little squeeze tubes of it. I'm going to get this all around here. But this stuff is pretty handy. It keeps it from getting on there. I put it on the back sides of the wheels when I'm swapping stuff out or fixing stuff on my vehicles, because your rims can rust weld to your hub, and so I usually coat this stuff on the back of the rims. That way it's easier to take it off the next time I need to work on it. Okay, got that done. Attaching the impeller to the engine. Again, this can be done with one person, but it helps if you have a helper. The helper does not need any mechanical skills. That's handy to know. So now we're to the point of getting it back on the engine. That's what they said you want to do, is this keyway on the impeller right here. This little notch that's cut in it lines up with the key on the shaft, And then you want this top stud here to go through the bracket of the engine. So you line it up, slide the impeller on there, just a bit loud. It's still on. Slide the impeller and everything on, and the housing, and then put the stud up through this top bracket here. And then, where is my nut for that? Just so I can make sure the housing stays in place. That stud through there, and I'm going to put the nut on it to keep it from falling back down. Now at this point, the impeller is right over the key, right there. The impeller is just barely poking through the housing right down there and is all the way on. It slid on, no problem. Zoom back out. Okay, got that done. Next, what we want to do, oh my, too much, is get these bolts lined up back through the holes. You got one there, and then the one on the other side of the engine. So get that to line up and pop through there. Those are the bolts that may have popped out earlier. So if it did, just put it back through the hole. Slide those back into place. And then just so it stays in place, remember I'm going to have the regular nut. Spin that on. I'm going to press from the inside of the housing to make sure that bolt's all the way through. I'm not going to tighten it up yet because I still want it to have possibly a little bit of movement to be able to get the other one in. So let's turn this thing around. Yep, looks like the bolt fell out of the other side. So we'll find that. Oh, there it is. And work it back through the hole. Lining it up with where it needs to be. Give me a minute. Okay, so I had to push the bolt from the inside and wiggle the housing just a little bit to get that lined up. Then on the inside is the standard nut. Get that on there. Okay. Then, look at that. Okay. Then we'll tighten those up and we'll put the nylon bolts, or the nylon nuts, on the back side of them and tighten them all up. Okay, so I got the standard nut tightened up and then I put the nylon nut over it and tightened that up. You're going to have to use the open end of your wrench for those because it's kind of a tight spot to where you can't get really something underneath there. And then keep in mind where your hands are and where your wrenches are when you're doing this, because you are working along the edge of this heat shield and there's these little screws here. There can be some sharp stuff underneath there. So if your wrench slips, you may end up cutting your hand. None of us like doing that. It irritates you. Tools get thrown and it's not fun. So I'm going to tighten the same thing up on this side. Tighten this bolt up all the way. And then, or tighten this nut. And then put the nylon nut on the back side of it. This side's so much easier to get to. Okay. So then we take our other nylon nut, put it on the back side there, tighten it up, snug that one up. Then we will snug up the one up here on top of the bracket. That way it stays in place. That one's nice and snugged up. Okay, now that those are all tightened back up, we're on to the bolt for the impeller again. I'm going to get some of this. I've got junk and grass around it. I'm just going to clean a little bit of that off, because you don't want to put gunk back into your machine. So remember, you've got this split washer, lock washer, that goes on first. Then you've got your big, thick washer that goes on after that. Put that back in there, hand tighten, so that you don't cross thread anything. Okay. Then it says, assemble the impeller bolt and lock washer and heavy washer and install on the impeller hub. Tighten firmly about 40 foot-pounds of torque with the socket wrench, extender bar, and 3/8 hex bit socket. So then, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and actually use the torque wrench. Because anytime there's a torque spec, I figure it's there for a reason. So I might as well use it. And if you ever call for a warranty thing and you say, well, I worked on it and this happened, and they're going to ask you try to possibly get out of it just with whatever company you're dealing with. So I'd like to say I put it back in there. I torqued it to 40 foot-pounds, just like the thing said to do. That way, everything's good to go. All right, done. Now we have our Cyclone Rake back up and running. New impeller. It's a little bit smaller impeller, but I don't know if that'll make a difference. They've made a few redesigns to this machine since, this one came out, because this machine and that machine have a few small differences. This one had a white frame with a different style bag. This machine has a black frame with a different style bag. Obviously a little bit smaller impeller in it, but it's back up and running, so we're good to go. Alright, I was watching through the video and I noticed I had a little bit of hardware left over. So one thing that I forgot is I put these two nuts on the outside of the heat shield to keep it from rattling. I had those two little nylon nuts left over. Put those back on there to keep that from rattling. I've got to put these two bolts back into this bracket. I forgot about those. And then I had a washer left over. So I started looking at my other machine. Well, where in the world did that one come from? It was a washer underneath this nylon nut here. So don't forget to put those back on. Now I know this was a bit longer video, but I've noticed doing research on Cyclone Rakes over the years that there's not really a whole lot out there about the Cyclone Rake. There are the promotional videos from the company itself. There's a few videos of guys using them in their own yard just to kind of show what it does. But there's not really anything on there about how to assemble the Cyclone Rakes or how to do these kind of repairs. Or I did find 2 other videos talking about how to swap out the impellers, but neither one of those were on the Z10 model, and they were replacing the impeller and the entire housing unit. So it didn't really tell you how to take apart the housing and swap out the impeller. So I know it's a longer video, but hopefully it'll help somebody out there that is having an issue and is looking around for how to fix these kind of things. So if that helps you, good. Yeah, I'm going to get back to work. Y'all be good.